Maybe you've been there. Growing up, someone said something to you or made a comment in passing that they thought was funny or non binding on your life, and yet somehow it colored or shaped you in a way that you couldn't have imagined in that moment. I can remember in the third grade being bullied, and I had missed a lot of school. I wasn't doing well physically. And when I was home, I was stressed out. When I was stressed out, I was eating. And when I was eating, I put on weight. And when I got back to school, thinking, man, I'm really going to charge ahead, one of the kids, just in passing, said, "Hey, that's not Hennessy, that's King Glutton Tut." And for the rest of the school year, I carried that weight, not just on my body, but I carried that weight inside my soul. And it impacted me for decades. And it's really something that I had to find freedom over. And I'm really excited today because I have a good friend of mine. His name is Dr. Mark Hanson, and he works with men to overcome the shame that they have faced in the past. So, Dr. Mark, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Bill. I just want you to know, Bill, I hear you. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. There's one thing I know. Kids are mean. They are just mean. And I'm sorry you had to carry that both physically and emotionally for all those years. So, yeah, it's toxic shame is a big issue with men, and for many men, that's why they're hurting. I listened to a podcast recently that talked about, the title of it was "Men Are Hurting," and we're even shamed even more about our shame by being told, don't talk about it. You just man up, be a man, just suck it up and don't talk about it. And I like to use, Bill, the illustration of a beach ball. All of us were kids when we were little and held that beach ball underwater. How long can I hold it underwater? And it'd pop up and it was a big game. But then I often will tell people, if you had a black Sharpie and you wrote on there every shame wound, every shameful thing that was said to you, whatever the kid just called you, glutton, whatever it was, times that you asked for love and didn't get it, that you wanted some attention or something, an affirmation, and you got ridicule or something else. If we have that beach ball, we got all those things on it, we hold it under the water because we don't want anybody to see it. And if the curse is the cure when it comes to shame, exposure. That's the curse. We don't want anybody to see what has been done to me, but that's the only cure for it, is for exposure. But we hold that beach ball under the water, so to speak, metaphorically speaking. And just like a kid would hold under, eventually it's going to pop up. When we get triggered, usually, and it pops up. What do? We grab it as quick as we can, put it back under the water, and hope that no one saw.
Yeah, I think that's really an important thing to talk about, because if that ball does pop up and if someone else does see it, they're going to grab at it and they're going to start reading all those shameful statements, and it's going to be like we're living it all over again.
Yeah.
And I
Or
think
more shame to it. Yeah.
sure, sure. And I think about that term toxic shame. And I think we could make an equivalent statement of toxic waste, because all the years we spend putting all that energy into keeping that ball underwater
Yeah.
could be used for something positive and constructive in our lives. So from a moment of acknowledgement, that would be a huge thing, to just say, hey, I was shamed and it was wrong and I don't have to deal with this anymore. I got to do something with this and be free of it. How do you help them make that transition?
Well, one of the things is to be a safe place where they can do that. As you just said, you can't share all your shame wounds with anybody, because some people are just not going to understand it. It might trigger them. Well, and if he's sharing his shame wounds, then man, they're going to expect me to share mine, and I'm not ready to do that. We have to create safe places, Bill, where you can say, here's what was said to me, and it hurt. It left a wound. I often use use this phrase: if someone cuts me with a knife on purpose, or they cut me with a knife on accident, it still leaves a cut. It still leaves a wound that has to be dealt with. Many times the shame wounds in our life, they're not meant to be that way. I shared a story one time from my own past when I was actually working for a parachurch organization that had helped me deal with my shame, and then I was helping other people deal with theirs. I was teaching a segment on the DISC profile, the personality or behavioral profile, and I am a high I, kind of off the chart I, but I'm a responsible I, as my wife says. I keep my head together most of the time. And the symbol, I was going over the different symbols for each of the different letters and behavioral types, and I was talking about the I's. Their symbol is the star. You can see I got barn stars on my shelves behind me. I love barn stars. And I made the comment, I'm teaching this to people, Bill, it's funny. And I said, they're kind of the show-offs. And it triggered me. I'm in the middle of teaching. And I get triggered, and I just stopped. And I thought, oh my, I'm like in this spin. And I just said, you know what? I need to share something with you all. It's all these participants in this seminar. I said, I just got triggered. I was told as a kid, quit showing off, you're embarrassing me. And that was usually from my parents. What I heard was, it's not okay to be you. I didn't mean it that way, but it was their shame getting put on my shame, and they're shaming me. John Maxwell says, hurting people hurt people. People with carrying a boatload of shame other people. And so, that going back to that beach ball, the curse is the cure. We're scared to death. If someone knew what was done to me, what happened to me, they would reject me. So I can't let anybody see it. But the only cure, Bill, is to let the beach ball come up. Because then when it's up, now we can deal with it. What we don't acknowledge. So we let it up, and awareness is where the healing can start to begin. Now I can talk about this in a safe environment with people that I can trust and that are safe to do so. So we've got to have safe environments. Yeah.
This would be a really good place to talk about the difference between counseling and coaching then, because a coach is going to answer that statement, I have been shamed, differently than a counselor. A counselor is going to say, well, how did that make you feel? And a coach is going to say, well, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have to let it define us. In my doctoral dissertation, one of the things I talk about is I specifically dealt with shame wounds in men, is that the majority of the time, a man's shame wounds come from his father. Because usually the father is supposed to be the most important person in a man's life, a young man's life, especially a boy's life. And sometimes that shame is that he wasn't there. And we're it over and over again in our culture. And even if dad is there, he's checked out. And so it's very easy, just like kids of divorce, they think, did I do something to cause this? The kid takes that on. Kid had nothing to do with that divorce, but they take it on because, well, it must be about me. That can be the same thing when someone does not respond, because the core lie of toxic shame is I'm not enough. I'm not enough. Now, for me personally, I hear it as I don't matter. So, hypothetical situation, I text Bill, hey, Bill, you want to have lunch? Bill does not respond right away. It takes him 3 hours to respond. Well, my shame wounds can be triggered that Bill just doesn't care. I don't matter to him. Otherwise, he'd have responded right away. You were doing wonderful podcasts like you do, helping retirees and stuff. And I'm like, see there, I'm not enough for Bill. I don't matter to him. Our shame wounds will trigger other things. And it's like, see, it just affirmed it. I don't matter. I don't matter. So it almost always comes back to, so if dad is on the scene, but he's not involved and he's not a safe place, that can create a whole nother environment of it must be me. And so it's learning to reframe things and to say, wait a minute here, is this really true that I don't matter? And then I'm kind of telling my own story here a little bit. I had to learn to say, do I matter to me? And who gets to decide? I don't have to matter to everybody. I get to decide who I matter to. And so that's a freeing thing. Whose opinion, a lot of people have opinions of me. Some are good and some are bad. I get to decide whose opinion matters to me. And so I get to say, does it matter to me that this person, I don't matter to this person in that moment? Then the shame doesn't have any control over me anymore. When I can pinpoint it and call it what it is, then I can address it, deal with it, and decide what I want to do with it.
Well, let's talk for a second about the spiritual aspect of this. You're a longtime pastor. In fact, I think we started ministry pretty much about the same time in our lives, and it's been a few years. Yeah. So when it comes down to God, how do we tap into what he says about us in order to diffuse what others have said about us?
That is a big one, because a lot of people, then what they do. So our image of God is almost always formed by our parents, how we experience. So my wife and I, we've done retreats in the past. We talk about the old book of love. And this is from Terry Wardle's Healing Care Group. The way we experience love from our parents is usually how we learn to experience love from God. I was raised in a different tradition than what I'm pastoring in right now. And so I grew up thinking God was just going to pinch my head off if I messed up bad enough. I did not see him as a loving God who cares about me and not only loves me, but likes me sometimes. I'm sure there's times I'm not very likable, but most of the time likes me. I can't remember who it was, but they said, Jesus came to cure God of a bad reputation. When we see Jesus, we say, yeah, there's times that he corrected people, but he did it because he loved them, not retribution. He did it to correct them because he loved them. It wasn't that, well, you're just an idiot. Jesus knew how to use shame. It is a very powerful tool. He says, you brood of vipers and everything. Sometimes he had to get after people, but for the most part, Jesus just looked at him, loved him. I love the story of the rich young ruler. Hey, I've done all these things, So talk about shame. Talk about a guy racked with shame. Was that rich young ruler who was sitting there trying to think. He was performance-based. He was trying to gain approval to show that he was enough. And Jesus says, well, oh, that's great. You're doing that. He affirmed it. Now go do this. He was pointing out, here's where you're missing it. And what he's doing, he walks away, but did Jesus condemn him? No. Jesus not come to condemn the world, but to save the world. So when do we truly believe that Jesus meant what he said when we're fearfully and wonderfully made? Can we start from that point? Do I wait a minute here? Yeah, I understand what sin has done in my life, and I understand, other people's sin has done in my life. But do I believe that Christ, not only what he did on the cross, not only saved me from what I've done, which is the guilt, that's the feeling we have for what we've done, but the shame of what was done to me, directly or indirectly. I've used the one of the things I ask people sometimes, write down 25 times you asked for love and you didn't get it. Hey, Dad, can I go to breakfast with you? Dad, you want to play ball and Dad's too busy? That's a way of asking for love, and it didn't happen. When we can make that shift that God is for us, and that is so hard, because if we have dealt with people who have not been there for us, who have continued to hammer us over and over through the years, one of the things we do is coarse joking. Sometimes we're told not to be careful with our joking. And what do we? I was just joking. Maybe you didn't need to make that joke. When we can start really grasping the love that God has for us, one of the things I tell people, when grace meets shame, grace always wins. When we truly experience the grace of God.
Well, let's talk about the effect of the shame. If I'm carrying stuff, I can recall things from grade school, and I honestly don't think they're having impact on me these days. However, I do know that they happened. Those are things that I'm not necessarily carrying around. I can recall them.
Yes.
But then in our day-to-day living, it seems like if you pictured a backpack on every person you met, and inside that backpack was every shaming experience they ever carried and never dealt with. We were just in a conference together a couple of weeks ago where that was a main point of one of the messages that was given.
Yeah.
Do you frame God as being for you or as being against you? And if you can change that mentality to God is for you, what happens to those things in that backpack?
I think here's what's interesting is Tom Ziegler was at this conference we were at, and I remember his dad from years ago, Zig Ziglar. And Zig talks so much about choice. And, we get to decide. Here's the thing. Who told us we had to carry the backpack? We walk around carrying this backpack thinking, I have to carry this. No one told you had to carry it. And we can unzip it and start taking it out one at a time. And sometimes that's the best way to do it. And God, I think that's how he's worked in my life, is he goes, something will trigger and come up. And I'm like, what is this about? And sometimes, Bill, it is a memory that we have so shut down that we don't even remember it until something triggers. That happened to me one time, and I was my wife, and I just stopped, and I had that glazed over look in my eyes. She goes, what's going on? I said, I just had a recollection of something that I'd not either thought about for years or had just put aside, buried, and talked it through with her, exposed it, addressed it, and said, no more. I don't want that. But here's the funny thing. When you tell someone, if you have the power to carry it, you have the power to set it down.
There we go.
I did it. I was doing a retreat one time with a younger gal in my church, and she was talking about something, and I said, boy, you're giving a lot of power away to that ex-boyfriend. And she looked at me, Bill, and she with like this statement of unbelief. She said, I have power? She had no clue that she had the power to say, let go. When I started working for this organization, sometimes I was the bad cop. I portrayed the person that maybe said the thing or whatever, And many times people would have hold of my wrists. I would be pushing back against, and they would be, you don't have any hold of me. You don't have any hold of me. And a volunteer who was working with them say, who's holding on to who?
Mm.
And this realization would realize my hands were open. They had my wrist. As soon as they let go, I would kind of walk off because it was symbolic to say, you have the power of what you want to do with those things. Will you let them continue to have power over you, or will you have power over it?
Mm.
And say, okay, so, your situation, yes, I did put weight on, but that's not who I am. I can change that. Zig Ziglar would say the same thing. We have the choice to say, what am I going to do with this?
Mm-hmm.
When people get that power and they realize, I've been carrying this. You don't have to. Sometimes they just need somebody to tell them, you don't have to carry this anymore. I love your podcast dealing with retirees. I'm amazed at how many people that have been carrying stuff for 40, 50 years. And when they finally set it down, take every thought captive that wars against God, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Jesus. You give someone grace and
Mm.
let them say, wait, I don't have to carry this anymore. This does not have to have power over me. And we let it go. We let it go.
My dad was raised in a very different tradition than I walk in or you, but a very similar one from our backgrounds. And
Yeah.
so I would do something wrong, and his response to me was, well, you're going to have to go to confession. Just remember that. And he framed everything in the fact that poor priest, he was going to have a hard time with this one. And
Yeah.
he's going to have a hard time with that one. And yet at the same time, my dad had found balance in his own life. And one of the things that he taught me was that Jesus Christ lived on this earth for 33 years, and he didn't please everyone. Who was he, Ray Hennessy, to try?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we're carrying that pack around, it's because we're still trying to people please. And
Yeah.
people our age could go to the grave unsatisfied and unforgiven over things that they've carried that they were never responsible for. I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that it can impact people our age, that we're learning new things every day. And so to learn to be able to deal with toxic shame and to be able to not just address it, but to actually release it. How would someone get a hold of you and start a conversation so that they could find that freedom?
Yeah. Oh, I'd love that. I'd love to have conversations about this. This is my wheelhouse here. They can reach me at my email at M-A-R-K, at standfastcoaching.com. Standfastcoaching.com. I particularly work with men, and I can refer a woman if a woman should listen to this. My wife is actually a coach as well and can help with this. So yeah, it has to be dealt with. It's keeping so many men from reaching their full potential of what God has for them. And it could be one thing someone said, and can be devastating stuff, but it does not get the last word if we'll go to God with it and let him heal us.